All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this month's installment of the Technorama Tuesdays 2020 webinar series. Tonight's topic is Live from Your Loungeroom, Turn Your House into Studio 3. My name is Hannah Murray. I'm the Student Services and Compliance Officer at the Community Media Training Organisation. I'm also a board member of Technorama, and I'll be on hand to assist in asking your questions throughout the session and making sure that everything generally runs smoothly. Before we get stuck into tonight's webinar, I'd like to pay my respects to the traditional owners of the land on which we are recording, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. The last Technorama Tuesday webinar showed you how to control your station remotely, but control isn't the same as live broadcasting. The most creative stations have gone the next step, and maybe you can too. So, what does it take? How do you get signals to the station? What about quality and delays? Switching back and forth? Are there any low-cost solutions? Here to answer all those questions and more, we have our panel for this evening featuring Stephen Wilkinson from Hope 103.2 FM. We've got Chris Deacon from ArtSound FM, Trent Geddes from 2GHR, Josh Pearson from Croc Media, also the Vice President of Technorama, and of course, we're joined by John Maizels, the President of Technorama, who I will throw to now to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Hannah, and welcome everybody. Anybody who's been to my house know that it's already set up as a radio station. It has way too much radio station, so I'm not saying anything tonight about that. But I did want to just throw in a word, and I'll come back at the end just to remind you about what we're doing for Technorama 20, TR20. So it was going to be the Warm Body Conference, but clearly that's not going to happen right now, although we're foreshadowing that a Warm Body Conference will happen at the end of the year. But we've announced TR20V, the virtualized TR20. And what's it going to be? It will be a one-day event, and it'll be not dissimilar to the Technoramas that you come to know and love. So we'll hear from all our usual friends, the people who contribute to our lifestyle at the various sector bodies from which we draw advice, guidance, and indeed money. And we will also have sessions and panels and breakouts, and we will have a dinner, and we will have a quiz night. It will be exactly like the real experience, except that you won't be there. And a lot of people have said, does that work? Does that even work? Can that be a thing? So I'll just tell you that right now I am working on, currently on 4 different virtualized conventions, the largest of which will be somewhere between 3,000 and 10,000 people. That's coming up at the end of July. But I participated in one, it seems like ages, but it was only the weekend before last, where we had 400 people participating, and we got to the end of the convention. It was exactly like the experience that you have at a real conference. And we learnt lots of really good things, many of which will go forward to make Technorama a great experience. I'll just share one thing with you really, really quickly. This is an example of one of the things we did. This was a session that came, this was a panel session. So you went into the panel room, but what you got was the panel on mounted combat. And it was done with real people on real horses with real weapons, showing how mounted combat actually happens. That's not something you can do in a real convention space, but well, we did it, and it was very exciting. But more about that later. Right now, what you can do after this session, of course, because we want you to concentrate, is go to the Technorama website, go to the story that says TR20 moves online. And if you've got any ideas, concepts, thoughts, suggestions for programming, get in right now, because the programming committee is putting the program together. We want to know what it is that you would find most useful, and probably we're going to focus on the things that we know right now are happening because of COVID, which is exactly what tonight's session is all about. So there you go. We're engaged. We're here to help you. Make sure, don't forget that we have the Q&A forum. Ask your questions in there. And thanks. Catch you at the end. Over to Hannah.
Thanks, John. All right, to start the session off, we're going to talk to Stephen Wilkinson from Hope 103.2 FM. I think you're actually in office at the moment, aren't you, Stephen?
I am. I'm in my office. I've probably been here more than anybody else. Thanks, Hannah. So the topic of today's webinar is about how to broadcast from home, how to make home your Studio 3. So there are many options, and of course there are many expensive options to do this. But in my recent experience and also the other panelists' experience, there are cost-effective ways, if not free ways, to actually get people on the air from their home. There are a number of software options as well as hardware options, but as we know, hardware is a bit more expensive. I'll just go for a quick list of some items that might be helpful and some of the things that I've experienced. But things like car going off in the background. Things like software program applications like CleanFeed is a very good option that I've found and have experienced, and has been using it for the last 4 weeks. Sorry, just anyway. So it's called CleanFeed. It's a web interface, and I'll just share my screen and show you what it looks like. So CleanFeed, this is the when you go to the website, and CleanFeed is free if you want to talk from one person to the other. It's very simple to use, and you go on like this, and as you can see, the meter is moving. And what that means is that you can easily from here connect to somebody else, send them a link within the web interface, and all they have to do is click on that. It opens up their browser, and if they've got a USB headset or microphone, then they can quite easily connect back to this location or studio, and that computer can be connected to your console to go live to air. This is, I have been using this for our breakfast duo. Our main host is in the studio, and this other co-host of the breakfast program is at home. He has a basic USB interface with headphones and a microphone, and that's how he goes to air live from his house to the studio. And we've actually been using that for the last 4 weeks as to help with isolation, to keep everybody separated and in different locations. So that's quite a inexpensive. If you don't have the capability of doing what we call a mix minus feed, means sending everything back to the remote person without hearing themselves. I think it's about $20 a month is an option to enable the echo cancellation function, which is what they call it. And with that, you're able to quite easily do remote connections to other people without any echo. An experience that we've been using it with is with all our on-air people, we supplied them with USB interfaces and those Rodecaster mixers. And so we were able to, with that, able to set them up at home. And with the CleanFeed paid version of CleanFeed, the host that would normally be in the studio with the breakfast program, he has a Rodecaster at home. He connects to the co-host via CleanFeed, and they're able to do two-way interviews that way. But they also bring in a guest on CleanFeed as well. And so they have a three-way conversation without any echo, and able to pre-record any interviews with guests that they have. The other options that I've had a bit of experience with is Source Connect is the other function. That is also free. I think you can have up to 4 connections, and also Audio TX, which is another software. They do offer a coronavirus version, which you're able to download for free and install. So yeah, so that there are a couple of, that's just a quick introduction into some of the software functions that are available through quite easily through websites without having to download anything. I'll speak about a couple of options in a few minutes, but Chris Deacon has just been implementing a number of systems at people's places for some of the stations that he's been working with. Chris, do you want to explain to us what you've experienced and the setups that you've had to implement?
Thanks, Stephen, and good evening, everybody from chilly Canberra. I've got a little bit of a presentation here, so I'll just share my screen with you. And we'll be there in just a moment. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay, so I'll just have to get rid of this pictures of ourselves because it's on top of my screen. So a number of scenarios from broadcasting at home. You could be a single presenter at the same location, or you could have multiple presenters at home. Some of the people that I'm dealing with at the moment in Ramadan Radio have set up a live broadcast from home in a suburb of Canberra. In fact, we set up a transmitter, a translator, a transmitter, a link from the studio to the transmitter, and the whole studio in about one day last week to get them on the air. They've had a few problems, however, with the internet speeds, but that's always something that is a problem in Canberra. They have in fact set it up so that they have multiple streams of school children streaming into their studio, and then the studio connects via a normal set of codecs, barracks type codecs, to link their home studio to the transmitter on Black Mountain. Another situation is where you've got multiple presenters from different locations at different times. Each of these present challenges as to the type of equipment you might want to use, because you wouldn't necessarily want to take out outside broadcast gear if there's a whole lot of locations involved. And then finally, there are a number of presenters contributing from different locations all at once, similar to a Zoom type setup, for example. And I've heard of people using Zoom for broadcast already. So just to look at a single presenter at the same location most of the time, typically what happens in commercial radio where one of their DJs, their stars, wants to broadcast from home, and the usual solution is take out the OB gear. It's a very basic OB setup with, once again, typically a USB mic or a headset, the laptop. You can play out the music either locally from the lounge room or the bedroom, or you can remote access into the studio and control your digital, usually a digital desk at the studio, with typically these types of software, VNC or TeamViewer, AnyDesk or remote utilities. Most of those come in a free version except for TeamViewer at the moment. Personally, I prefer remote utilities because it allows me to do file transfers quite easily and supports audio, as does AnyDesk. Your connection from home would be either via internet, Wi-Fi through a WAN connection, or a 4G connection, and usually very high quality setup using real-time broadcasting protocol, a low latency, low delay. For those of you listening who aren't so techie, you don't get much of a delay at all, a few milliseconds, and you can also support two-way connection, so you can cue the signal from your studio so you know how to start the broadcast. You may also include more sophisticated facilities like a voice over IP phone interface, and another way of broadcasting from home, but a lot simpler, that has already been mentioned by Stephen. Simple software-based solutions like CleanFeed or Zencaster is another one that might be used. Then if you've got multiple presenters at the same home, for example, you might want to broadcast a music group, then you need to have a little bit more. So you basically have the same as the first setup. It's typically an OB. It's a very specialized occasion. You want a high quality solution because it might be music. So you add a mixer with multiple mics, multiple headphone feeds. It becomes a little more complicated. That, by the way, is my own home studio. I've got the Rode microphone on the left there. I'm using the playout software, which is Radio Boss, and it's part of my very messy study. The problem happens when you have to have multiple presenters at different locations at different times. I was given a challenge about a week ago. I was asked by multicultural radio station, CMS Radio. They said, we have about 150 broadcasters and we need to broadcast from home and it needs to happen as soon as possible. So given that challenge, I thought, can't exactly take the OB gear around because I'd be doing it every hour of the day and it'd be a different language group. It becomes very impractical. You can look at simple mobile phone solutions. I've heard of people using software called Lucy Lite or Lucy Live. You might want to make a note of that and look it up on the internet. Very, very useful software. Some of it is cheaper and some of it is more expensive. Some people use Facebook Live Audio as well. At ArtSound, we have the Tie-Line Report IT facility, so a mobile phone can communicate with a codec, a more expensive sort of codec that you might already have at the studio. And that will allow, for example, 10 different people or 10 different locations to send broadcast quality audio through their mobile phone. You will, of course, need a microphone interface or a line interface for your phone. The other solution is a cheap solution. In fact, it's free. We set up an IceCast server at the studio, typically on the automation computer, and then we point Shoutcast or IceCast streams to that computer from any location in the world, basically. And you can use any software that supports IceCast streaming. The one I choose is Radio Boss because it incorporates the playout software. It has scheduling. It has a microphone button on it to allow for home usage for typical DJ internet radio station usage, but it also incorporates the streamer. There's other software that does it as well. Mix is another brand that is used, very simple. And all you need to do is input the IP address of the studio and off you go. It's not terribly secure, however. Anybody could get on and maybe find out the IP address and maybe you could start broadcasting. So there are other ways I'll mention in just a minute that you can get around that. The studio end is a server. It has an IceCast server which sends a stream straight into the automation system. The automation system turns it on or off on a time-based system. So if your slot comes up at 10 o'clock in the morning, it's live from that point and your stream is going into the broadcast feed. Once again, Clean Feed or Zencaster can do similar things as well. Stephen's already mentioned Clean Feed. We use it for, at the moment, primarily for off-site interviews. We have people preparing programs at home, putting them into Dropbox and loading them up to the station with synchronization software that copies it from Dropbox into the automation system. So no people are involved in actually processing those files. You have to rely on the presenters coming up with exactly the right format though. It has to be exactly what the computer wants to see. And we found Clean Feed to be extremely useful. Here's the example at the multicultural station. Over 100 broadcasters, 35 different languages. We feed it into Zara at the moment. Zara is not terribly good because if the internet drops out, then Zara says, right, finished with you for the day. We're now going to put music on so the rest of the program doesn't go to air. If you put a more sophisticated automation system in, Radio Boss is a simpler one. It can go in and monitor the stream. If the stream drops off, it will drop in some music, but as soon as the stream is re-established, it will re-establish the stream, so it's a little safer. The way of getting around the security problem is that Radio Boss now offers a cloud-based solution. It actually provides the streaming service that you would normally buy for about $10 a month, but it also allows you to upload your streams to a server in the cloud based on authorization of a number of users. So you could have 10 different or 100 different users with a log-on password, and they can go on the air as, one after the other seamlessly, and then the radio station takes the stream from the cloud back to the studio. So that's a bit safer that way. We've actually tested the first part of that, that is the stream to the studio. We haven't tested Radio Boss, but we're intending to upgrade to that very shortly. ArtSound is currently relying primarily on home producers using USB microphone, Audacity, doing home production, and when they're happy with the production, dropping it into a Dropbox 2 terabyte version, which is available at the station. And then we use software called GoodSync, which is very, very smart file backup software. It just copies it across to the automation system. There's nobody at the studio whatsoever, hasn't been there for 2 months, and it just happens. So it's a very simple, pretty cheap solution, basically, without having to go live. People get a bit scared going live. We are planning a virtual radiothon in May or June, and we may combine pre-records with a live component. ArtSound is also, I think I've mentioned already there that the IceCast stream can be switched off by Radio Boss. It's very elegant the way it does that. It fades it in and out. And latency is an issue for any IceCast stream, as opposed to the first example I gave earlier, which is a real-time protocol with minimal delay. But it can be managed by proper protocol. It can be as simple as playing music at the start of your cross so that it fades into the music. Once once the delay has caught up, typically between 5 and 30 seconds, you can proceed as normal. It's one way, and you do rely on the quality of the internet holding it up. We're also looking at Report IT, phone software linked to the Tyline Merlin codecs, which we already have in the studio, as another way of doing remote interviews. So that's all from my little presentation. Do we want to stop for questions at that point?
That would be great. We've got a question from Matt Bird asking, how's the audio quality through CleanFeed? Would it work for a music feed to a station?
Yes, it does. It actually runs in stereo. You can run it in stereo. Also with the, it is very good quality with the free version. With the first paid version, you can alter the bit rates and the type of algorithms you're using. I think it's up to maybe 512 kilobit. So it's a lot better quality and in stereo. I've been surprised at the low latency, so the low delay. It's about 250 milliseconds, so which is very good going through a web browser. Yeah, it's been a very good experience. Just to follow on from what Chris said, we have the facility for people to be able to voice track live into our automation system, but like Chris said, some people can be a bit nerve-wracking. You're relying on no glitches or technology. So we have done a similar thing to what Chris was saying with Dropbox. We use OneDrive, and with most not-for-profits using Office 365, you get OneDrive as part of that. And so we've set it up so that it'll, people will use OneDrive, drop their audio files into that, and then that automatically imports into the playout software, and that can be put anywhere in the log as a voice track or interview that way. Were there any more questions of Chris? No.
Any questions or comments before we open the floor to the rest of the panel? Not yet. Oh, none here. Thanks, Denise. All righty. Well, shall we open the floor to everyone else?
I was going to check with Trent to see what but does any out of the panel have anything that they wanted to expand on that? Doesn't look like it. Now with Trent, with his experience with his station, Trent, what have you been implementing to get people on air at your station?
Well, we haven't actually, fortunately in our case, we haven't had too many presenters who have wanted to, work from home. We've got a situation where a lot of presenters are solo. Those that have considered the idea, we've looked at, giving them the option to either voice track in themselves using software, which we have, we're on the station playlist platform. So they've got a VT server, and client application which you can install on the person's computer. They can log in remotely with a username and password and record that way. Other than that, I would set up something along the lines of the Clean Feed or the Source Connect applications, because they're nice and easy. You can open a web browser, and in our case, in our studio, we have the on-air automation machine, plus we have the, internet and video audio machine that we can open that up on. We can open a channel up on the panel, and they can broadcast into that, quite easily. The other thing I've just pursued from general dabbling, because I tend to, play around with a lot of systems, down the form of the IceCast streaming, there is a free package if you dabble in setting up your own servers and configuring things, called AzureCast, which encapsulates IceCast server and enables you to add features, like an automatic stream. You can do streamer and DJ accounts, so you can set these up so that each of your presenters can have their own account, and they talk to this particular streaming service, and then your automation end back in your studio end would listen to that server, and all of the changing between presenters would be done on that server rather than in the studio. So your studio is just listening to one solid feed. And in the case of someone dropping out, you could load it up with music and use the automatic play out function within it to be able to, I guess, take over in those cases.
I guess, you'd have to have a bit of
you've got to have a bit of a technical nous, though.
to do that and set that up. Okay. Of course, people can go live to air by using their OB equipment, remote equipment, like Chris had said. But when you've got so many different presenters, you haven't got that many codecs that you can send out. We have a tie-line codec, and that was one of my options, but I wanted to keep that up my sleeve. So that's why we used Clean Feed for our remote person, so that if we did have a full lockdown where no one could actually come to the studio, then we'd be able to use our OB equipment. Now, someone like Josh, who's experienced with a lot of OB equipment and through his role at Croc Media, Josh, are you able to share what you guys have been doing in the sort of big end of town, as they say?
Yeah, so hello.
Hello.
As we touched base, I think a couple of weeks ago on one of the last webinars, we've kind of gone down the timeline approach, luckily enough to be quite a large commercial station that I'm working for. I think at the moment there is 36 G3 or Bridget codecs out and about in the neighbourhood. Pretty much every presenter's been given their own headphones, their own 4G modem that we have with these kits and sent out into the network. And and gone. But we're kind of lucky enough that our office, we've got some people still working back in the studios. So we've got panel operators and technical people who can connect all this up. Something we were looking down the track of, if lockdowns and things got a bit restricted, was to look into some of the stuff and the way Chris is running it, being able to access your playout system from home. We were going to set up remote panel operators separate to, remote presenters as well, and having that, being able to control switching and what feeds come in and out of the building, and et cetera, using some digital equipment.
Yeah, because you have digital consoles, so that makes it a lot easier to turn things on and off remotely.
We're kind of set up that, from my iPhone, I can control, everything that's on air now. Obviously not everyone's got that kind of luxury, but, using some of the tools like Clean Feed and Report It and everything else, there are hundreds of ways now, that we can connect back into the station. So as I said, we've gone down that Report It and codec and tie line kind of path where we've got switching. Currently at the moment, I think we broadcast out to 32 different transmitter sites. So, we've got full digital control over all that because of the size of the network.
Great. Yeah, I know that a sister station in Melbourne, to us, all their presenters have been broadcasting from home, and they've just been doing that over the Report It, using the Report It, Tie-Line Report It app with codecs and that sort of thing. So each shift has been done like that. Yeah,
one of the greatest things, and I've seen some stations do is, keeping just I think kind of Trent mentioned it a bit before, an open channel into the studio and remote control of your playout software. Mentioned you can play, stop and start things and jump in on the mic on and off from home all the time. Something as simple as that makes it really easy, and you can do all that for free. There's free software and everything that'll make that happen for you.
Yeah, so even simple automation software, if it has an analog setup, you can have analog audio going into your playout software and into your playout computer, and that could be your codec or whatever that you're streaming from somewhere else, and that's a way of remotely switching it to where when you can't have somebody in there to switch around. Yes, Chris.
We have a question from Heidi, and she's asking the difference between fixed and dynamic IP addresses. It's important if you are wanting to remote into your studio that the studio end has a fixed IP address, so that you don't have to go through the hassle of chasing the location of your equipment within the station every time you log in. And when you order your broadband connection at the studio, make sure you specify a fixed IP address. And then you may have to do something called the network address translation, which translates that fixed IP address it translates the port number of the equipment you're trying to access within your station from outside the station. Josh, you might like to elaborate on that.
I think we can elaborate on that, and I think I would say, Hannah, we should set that up as another total topic.
Total topic, yes. I think that's a good idea.
We could talk networking till the cows come home. Some of the really good things, look, if you're lucky enough to be able to use things like TeamViewer, AnyDesk, and all those kind of things, you can slightly kind of bypass the need for remote access to use a fixed IP. But it definitely helps if you're trying to connect back into codecs and things like that to have a static IP. Most professional internet providers offer them for free. I think that's the best way I can sell it without giving a shameless plug. Label to camera. There's lots of I think we should take that into another topic, but if anyone has any really specific questions, ask them now. But we could probably do another topic soon about networking side of remote accessing your station.
Cool. We have a few more questions while we're on the question train. Bukala Essen has asked, could you please recommend a better streaming software option?
All of them.
Yeah.
Then what?
Yeah.
It's, how long's a piece of string? I suppose it's streaming. I gather you mean streaming the whole station like you would do. That's probably another topic as well, which is a big one. So there, have you got something to add?
I think we could probably say, could we expand a bit on that question? Are you talking about streaming your entire station, or streaming so presenters can hear it at home, or streaming to the public, or something similar to. I've gone totally mentally blank.
That's okay. Bukala, would you be able to elaborate on that question? And while we wait for your answer, we'll move on to the next question really quickly. Mary W. has asked, I think Chris mentioned you could use Zoom. Could you elaborate on that, please?
I don't know too much about it because I haven't done it myself, but I know that one of the Ramadan radio groups in Canberra has configured up a Zoom connection to their computer in the studio and is putting school kids to air live simultaneously from a number of locations. And it seems to be working very well.
My sister station in Brisbane did a virtual school outside broadcast by using Zoom. And so they had all the school kids and teachers coming in on Zoom and broadcasting live that way with interacting with the studio. There are a number of stations that are using Teams, which is the Microsoft version of Zoom, to actually bring in talent on air people from other locations instead of using clean feed or anything like that. So you can use Zoom, you can use Skype, you can some people even using TeamViewer, the audio part of TeamViewer, to come into their station to go live to air. I've known stations over the years using that to do an outside broadcast.
And just extending what Stephen is saying, you might think of Zoom and Skype and TeamViewer, all of these things, as being visual tools. But if you ignore the video, you still have an excellent multi-channel audio aggregator and echo canceller. So if you have a single computer that is attached to your console, to the telephone channel, it's just getting its audio from the telephone channel on the desk, it's sending its audio back to the telephone channel on the desk, and then your Zoom conference can automatically aggregate a whole lot of callers coming in a way that allows them to talk to each other and talk to people in the studio, and indeed, if you've got another phone patch on another phone channel, talk to people on the phone. And all of that can happen nicely and seamlessly, and it manages all the audio for you.
Great. We've got another question from Adam Watkins. Hi, Adam. What costs are involved using the Report IT app?
Well, you need to have a tie-line codec at the studio to, if you like, to receive the connection. The Report It app, I can't remember. Is it?
It's an app. There's an upfront subscription fee of about $300 or something, and then it was a year for a 10 license setup, and that gives 10 iPhones or 10 reportable iPhones. You can download the software off the net for free.
Sorry, what was the annual fee?
The annual fee, once you've paid your upfront fee, it's an annual fee of $49 for the 10. The station pays for that. Yeah. And the users basically just get a password.
Yeah, and you can manage that all through a web portal with Tie-Line, where you can add users and delete users and change the passwords and all that for the Report It.
If you're lucky enough to have a codec that is used for your like a multi-channel Merlin Plus, you can do all that on that same codec as your STL to the transmitter side as well.
Yeah. There any more?
Yeah.
There is also the option, the Report It application. You can download a free variant and you can pay a per hour fee, which is generally, I think it's about $10 per hour if you're going to use it casual and you're not going to find a justified need to spend that sort of expense. And that's the same deal. It connects with all of those codecs, but you know, the app's essentially free and you're just paying for the time that you're using it.
Yeah, there's a similar software, Lucy and Lucy Lite, except the only difference there is that Lucy is based on software at the studio rather than having to have a codec, and it can be an expensive solution, but it's worth having a look at.
Yeah, and that works for we also have a Telos Zip 1 codec, hardware codec, and Lucy Lite works with that and can connect to that just like the Report It app does. So it works in the same way. on the Q&A, the Technical Community Radio Q&A Facebook page, we've had this sort of discussion from time to time, and a few people have submitted ideas there. Just one I wanted to highlight was Michael Keane, because I think he's on tonight as well. He also came up with the idea of using people setting up their own little, like Chris talked about, their own streaming encoder at their home and streaming to their playout software at the studios. So he has some great documentation on that. Yeah, so that's the Community Radio Q&A. If you want to grab that, and we'll probably be able to link to that through the notes for this webinar.
Yep, we'll be able to send slides from this webinar tonight and a list of links for all the things we've been talking about as well. Great. As supported by Chris and Stephen.
Could I just mention, Hannah, that the Shoutcast solution is a very elegant solution and costs you $0. It can be put in place within half an hour. All you've got to do is add a couple of lines to a bit of code, load it up to your machine and hit start, and you've got a server that's sitting there listening for your stream. And all you've got to do is push a stream towards it with the same IP address as your studio. And so you can do that for 50 or 100 sites. And then the challenge then becomes coordinating so that everyone doesn't collide with each other. You've got to get a protocol organized so they log off and then log on. Although if you go to cloud-based solutions, they have solved that with various, I think Trent was talking about that. Multiple streams can come in and then can transfer from one user to the next seamlessly without colliding and causing problems. But this is the way of the future. There's a lot of radio stations moving towards these cloud-based solutions, and we could have a whole different session of this webinar, of another webinar, looking at cloud radio at some stage. Hopefully we don't end up all having to go into the cloud, because nothing like going to the studio, is it?
That's true. We've got a question from Steve Byrne. How does CleanFeed handle mix minus? Does an announcer hear an echo of themselves? That could be off-putting. I think you answered that before, saying that they have a $20 upgrade.
So initially, the free version 1-to-1, if the remote person has a USB interface, they can plug headphones in and a mic into that, and then that automatically creates a mix minus. But at the other end, with the free version, you need to create a mix minus feed from your desk, which is a feed of everything else except them going back to the remote person. If you take up I think it's about $20 a month, that has a echo cancel function that you can activate. And as I was saying, we've used that for remote people doing connections between remote places rather than going through the studio, and it works quite well.
There's a very helpful YouTube video with the founder of CleanFeed, where he explains the philosophy behind it. But basically, he designed it so his mother could use it. It's very simple interface, so it's to be to be applauded.
Yeah, it is. I think it's based in the UK. I think is where they are. Yeah.
Great. What I'm going to do now is just open the floor for people to ask questions, and you can either type them into the Q&A, or if you put your hand up as a participant, we can answer your questions live, and you can use your voice to talk to us. So yes, I encourage you, if you would like to ask a question that's a bit more hairy and you can't be bothered typing it out, ask us with the power of voice. We are in radio after all. So, we've got Carol has made a comment. What's this about designing for his mother to use? Why not his uncle? Good question, Carol.
Maybe he didn't have an uncle.
Yeah. Who knows? Who knows? Just with your questions, making sure that they're in the Q&A section so they don't get lost. But if no one else has any other questions, do we have any closing comments for the webinar from the panel?
There are plenty of options out there to go live, no matter what budget you have. Even if it comes to actually needing to put your whole station to air from the cloud or another location, there are remote control switches that you can put in place that are web-based. So if you are an analog station, you can bypass your whole studio. You have to buy that piece of equipment, but you're not talking about a lot of dollars there. And that way you can bypass the whole station and put your remote location to air as the only thing to air. Even if, you can look at things at your transmitter site to be able to stream directly to your transmitter site to go live to air in the event that you, for some reason, can't get into your studio. I guess the stations that were in some ways prepared for this were the stations that had already in place a lot of disaster recovery type of alternative backups of ways of going to air. And then there was a lot of people that had to scramble to create something to get to air or to work remotely.
We've got Rod Pettit. He has his hand up. I'm going to allow him to speak. Oh, okay. Rod, would you like to, there you go. Hello.
Yes, hi.
Hi, Rod. How are you doing?
Good, thanks. I just realised that there's a Q&A section. I was putting it in my question in the wrong place. I'll read it. So we don't have anyone in our studio. All our systems, at least for the last weeks, all our systems are remotely managed using AnyDesk. Many of our presenters have transitioned to remote voice tracking, no problem. So we did have a small number, now it's a large number, but there are still many presenters who are resistant to that. They like the live feel of broadcast. They want to be able to broadcast their own music, CDs, turntables, whatever, iTunes and things. They're at the moment, in fact, they're basically not presenting. The automated playlist goes in place of that, and I'm looking for a solution for that. So I've been experimenting with streaming. That basically they create their show live on whatever facility they have at home, and it streams in. So from the point of view of what's that? So we use Station Playlist. Station Playlist has a microphone input which we currently don't use. We feed Station Playlist into our desk together with our mic. Well, we can't do that because we're not in front of the desk. So what I'm looking at doing is streaming into the mic input of Station Playlist, which they can remotely control via AnyDesk. And I guess I'm working on that. There's a number of pieces to the puzzle there. One is that I saw on the various forums, including the Q&A forum that you were referring to, the technical Q&A forum, AnyDesk can TCP tunnel an audio stream. Stream what you hear can be used on the PC of the presenter at home. So, all right, so now we've got an audio stream coming into the studio potentially. And then we've got to take that stream and ultimately inject it into Station Playlist as a microphone. So again, with the help of the various forums, I'm now using something called M Player, which is a streaming player. I'm using a virtual audio cable, which I'd never heard of until yesterday, and creating a virtual feed into the mic input of Station Playlist. I haven't actually got it working yet, but most of the pieces are there. So my concern is, early on in this discussion, someone talked about latency, low latency. I guess I haven't experienced this low latency, so I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong.
Josh had something to...
Yeah. Hey, Rod, first thing, excellent work. That's like the fact that you've got to where you've got is pretty amazing. Look, it's been a while since I've used AnyDesk, but I've never successfully got AnyDesk audio working properly. Okay. Chris, even have either of you?
No, we don't use AnyDesk.
Yeah. My suggestion would be, and I think someone's put it in the chat window as well, Rod, is use AnyDesk for your control, but I would probably suggest using something like CleanFeed to get your audio back to the station, and then you can use virtual audio cable or something like that to control, or to basically, you know, have it as an input. The latency will be a lot cleaner, the audio quality will be a lot better, and you know, it'll probably maintain a stronger connection than just using AnyDesk. So if you were to use something like CleanFeed, yeah, you'd have that broadcast audio quality straight back into the studio then, which you could quite easily use by using virtual audio cable, link that input from the stream back into station playlist. Anyone else got any ideas for Rod?
Well, I think some of the delay that you're finding comes with the Stream What You Hear app, because it's a lot like Icecast and other encoders like it, where it's going to add delay in its process of transmitting. And I noticed that the technology that the Stream What You Hear app uses is MP3 or waveform. So it is going to actually build that delay as it's being sent over the internet and then received at the other end. So, you know, another one of those CleanFeed or those associated applications, they've got encoding technologies which are written to, you know, run over challenging conditions, and they hold less delay than what those particular applications use or do.
Okay, thank you for that. Regarding CleanFeed, I guess in the some time ago, maybe a month ago, CleanFeed was discussed in this forum, and we've done, well, a number of experiments with CleanFeed and actually not found it that great. We've found a lot of dropouts, particularly with mobile phone use, but also home internet use. We've found that the audio quality sometimes is fantastic, and other times is audio that we wouldn't be happy to broadcast. So we sort of we've given up on CleanFeed, I guess is what I'm saying.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. John?
Rod, I would say you probably want to do more experiments. So one of the experiences that I've had over the last 5 weeks, where I have been testing pretty much every video conferencing platform known to people, we have discovered that there are times when we'll come and test one and it will perform abysmally, and then 2 weeks later it'll perform just miraculously well. We had a really bad experience with Jitsi, with video, when we first tested it. We'd written it off, and then it was an absolute savior when we ran a virtual conference a week and a half ago, and every other time I've tried it, it's performed just beautifully. I think what I'm seeing as we look at tools is that there are any number of factors that can cause them to work well or badly, some of which are going to be outside any control that you've got. So if you really want absolute control, you will use appliances, and you will use point-to-point connections, which is the sort of thing that you would do if you were using just, you know, little point-to-point coders that are going between devices, and the only thing in the middle is a piece of internet string that's going to perform correctly. If you start using services which rely on servers somewhere in the cloud, then you suddenly have questions of how much other traffic are they sustaining, what's between you and them, and then all the way back. And this becomes a bit of an imponderable. So I guess you sort of, you know, you pay your money and you takes your choice. But the simple rules are: work with the maximum bit rate and bandwidth that is possible to achieve. Make sure that there aren't any constraints at your end or the other end of your end, where that is. Keep an eye on bit rates. For instance, has anybody had a look to see how many bits are being used in this session right now? And I can tell you, because I'm going to look now, about a megabit up and down. There are other services that will use 2 or 3 megabits in each direction. And the services use 2 or 3 megabits in each direction might actually not perform any better. So again, more imponderables. The best thing to do is test, but don't give up straight away.
All right, thank you. Just one comment on AnyDesk. I think someone...
Except with AnyDesk.
Yes, I think someone suggested, okay, so someone suggested actually with TCP tunneling that you actually end up with quite reliable audio feed. So I guess I've taken that that hint from one of the forums, and currently that's why I'm pursuing it.
Josh?
Yeah, look, in good theory, it should work. But I guess you're having the same problem that you're probably having with Clean Feed then is what's the internet connection at either end like? So what's the internet connection at your studio? And then what's the internet connection at people's homes? You know, are we talking something like, are they on Telstra? Are they on fiber to the node? Are they on NBN? You know, NBN's really great. If you run a trace route from your home to your studio, you'll find out that you probably end up routing via Singapore and then Perth to get from one side of Canberra to the other. I'm pretty sure that's how Chris Deacon's internet's run. You know, you're at the mercy of your provider in how they route your stuff. And you also said you had issues with running it over a phone. I'd be interested to know whether that was on 4G or something similar. You probably need to do a bit more, some pressure testing between the sites and see, yeah, as John said, you know, what kind of stuff is it, how many packets, how many megs, how many things is it using to get from the person's home to the station, and see if you can find ways of cleaning that up a lot.
Actually, there's a good question there. If it's a knob that you can actually turn within your service, is QoS, quality of service. Now, voice calls and some video calls are treated as high quality of service requirements depending on the router and the network that you're using. If you can establish within the network fabric that you require a specific quality of service, the network will respond to that and give you fewer hits than if it thinks you just want to send a Word document from one place to another. And so working with the way the network works, which becomes very technical, I don't dispute that, but working with the way the network works and using facilities within the network, and that may be what you meant by tunneling, will give you potentially better results. Paying more money does too.
Okay. Thanks for your feedback, guys.
I think we need to just keep things in perspective. We're talking about emergency broadcasting here. We're talking about exceptional circumstances. And like the ABC is using tools that drop out all the time and out of focus video to get the message across, I think we are being a bit more tolerant at the moment of lower quality, although we are aspiring to the highest possible quality that we can get. So we're not talking about, you know, the permanent installation here or an STL.
Yeah, we've been running Clean Feed, as I was saying, for 4 weeks. I mean, it is only 3 hours a day, but I think we've probably had 2 dropouts in that time, and one was just a sort of a glitch, and the other one was a big dropout, but that was something down the street. So you can't sort of help that. So yeah, and of course, yes, it is probably going via UK and back, and yeah, surprising the how low the delay is on it and the quality. So persevere, keep trying.
Yeah.
I'd encourage you, Rod, to, as you get through steps, post them on the community radio forum. People will help.
Yeah.
Thanks for your question, Rod.
Thank you.
All right. We have some more questions. I'm just going to go. Sorry, Rod, I'm removing you. Oh, not from the webinar. Gosh. Tell you what, I'll come back to that. We've got a question from Nathan Delay saying, "Hi guys, I'm making a manual mix minus feeding all faders to program 1, and then the clean feed return being program 2 that gets audio from every other fader except the clean feed fader. Is that okay?"
Yep,
Thanks
that's exactly
perfectly
what a
okay.
mix minus is.
Yeah.
That's
it's what your desk is doing under the covers. The only difference is you're burning up a bus because you want to save or don't have a phone patch channel, but it's exactly what the hardware would be doing otherwise. And it's very smart move.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
Okay. I've got Evan has said, "I have a system working comprising 2 Raspberry Pi 4s. The Send Pi has a $150 8-channel USB mixer plugged into it. The Receive Pi has a $60 USB audio interface to send audio to the studio desk or automation system. You just power up the Pi and they will lock in and start low latency streaming automatically. I've also built and testing a Raspberry Pi touchscreen switcher for the studio end, but that can also be controlled remotely using a VNC connection to the touchscreen. I wouldn't say that's a question, Evan, but that's very interesting.
No,
it's that Evan does a webinar on how he's done that and tells
That'd
everybody.
be cool.
I was going to say, Evan, you have just committed to a write-up that can go into the resources section of the Technorama website. And yes, you'll be called on for a future webinar.
Show of hands, Evan's doing it. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks, Evan. We'll have that
Thanks, Evan. Awesome.
That'll serve you.
We've got your details.
Sounds like a very great suggestion.
Yeah.
It is.
We've got, I think, Heidi Tobin wants to ask a question live. I'll pop her on. It might actually be not Heidi, but we'll allow her to talk and find out. Heidi, you're on.
Unmute.
Unmute. Okay. Just interested in Chris's comments about it being an emergency situation and things will eventually go back to normal. It will be interesting to see what pieces of the hardware and software we carry over from the situation we're in at the moment into real time middle of next year, for instance. I think we'll see some advances in technology that we wouldn't have embraced at all, except for the virus that's caused us to go there.
I don't think we'll be going back to normal ever.
I think you got a point there, yeah.
Yeah, we'll get an upgrade in the NBN though. That's the issue.
I'm already fighting with presenters as saying they don't ever want to come back to the building.
Yeah, well, there's that.
All right.
Thanks, Sarah.
Terry kind of made an interesting comment on as a question just about quality of service, and he says, well, QoS isn't supported on the public internet, and fair enough. Now we're not going to go down the very spiraling deep black hole of tricky networky stuff right now. Certainly not tonight, future night. But it's a good thing to discuss on Q&A, where we can at least grab some of the conversation and vaguely archive it to the extent that Facebook allows you to. There are still ways of making QoS work, so like via VPNs, router to router, pulling nasty stunts, but you can get some things to do. But if you've got a situation, let's talk about it on Q&A.
Can I give a plug to Hannah's CMTO? I mean, one of the major issues here is training. We've got a technical solution for most of these issues, and the biggest barrier is people are scared of this new technique. And my God, do I have to broadcast from home? It's tricky. It's hard enough just going on an OB when all the technicians are there. If you're throwing them at home and say, here's the gear, turn on at 10 o'clock, that's something they've never done before. It's very scary.
I think the thing that we find most is that a lot of people, especially even in this webinar, like you have people at all different levels of technical knowledge. So you have people that are coming in that have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. And then there's people that think this webinar is extremely basic. So trying to find ways to cater to all these different people that need information and need it clearly and concisely is really tricky. And I'd encourage any station to sign up for the CMTO Station Tech for the non-technical courses. And at least that can help to get some of your presenters that are interested in tech up to speed with these technical processes, and at least get some sort of theory behind what we're talking about. Because once you do know kind of the language, it's not as scary. And I think that's half the barrier, is that we're using a lot of jargon when we talk about technology. So getting over that hurdle first, and then we can actually dive into what the actual problems are. I think that's where it starts. And I think that's something we'll be talking about at the conference. So definitely watch that space. We have Bukala Essen, who has a question to answer live. I'm just going to put her through. Hi, Bukala. You have to unmute your mic.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to just find out, because we do some video stream as well. So I was trying to find if there's an alternative here, because we use a US company now that helps support a live video stream. Would you by any chance have a recommended local software we can use?
When you say local software, what do you tell us what you're trying to achieve?
Maybe Australian. So it's a video stream. So we do
Yeah.
live video interviews as well in the studio, apart from audio. So yeah, so we stream online on the website.
Are you using Facebook Live or Instagram
Live? Not through I would use Facebook Live, but there's a software that then helps us to take it into the website, or we can do direct live stream on the website. So at the moment, that's what we're using at the moment. We're using Stream, which is a US-based software.
Okay.
More a host.
Host.
Right.
Bukola, I'm going to make a suggestion. That's a really good one to throw to the Brains Trust on Q&A, and then rather than try and do it here on air, we can sort of unpack that with the correct questions until we understand exactly what all the constraints are, and then sort of help you find a solution. There are many.
To give you a quick kind of thing, the kind of questions we would be asking, and it probably makes it go into a very long thing, would be what type of cameras, what type of internet is available, where do you want to broadcast to, and all that. Off the top of my head, if you wanted to go and start doing some research tonight, look at Open Broadcaster, look at also known OBS, look at XSplit, and look at vMix. They're three free-ish. I say free-ish because you can pay for some features on it. Where if you plug a webcam in, you can just stream live to Facebook, YouTube, and all those kind of things. But definitely a really good question for Q&A. And maybe even down the track another webinar. We'll take some webinar ideas from this one. How do I broadcast my studio video style?
Cool.
Very interested to know how many stations are using video, by the way. That's an important consideration. Once upon a time it was, no, we only do sound. Whereas, now we're talking about broadcasters who are doing video and audio and to different outlets.
Now I've got to make sure that, there's no food on my shirt and my makeup's done when I go and fix a microphone in the studio.
You're in serious trouble, Josh.
Does that help answer your question, Bukola?
Yes. What's the first one that you said? Open what?
Open Broadcaster Studio.
OBS.
OBS. OBS is sort of video. It's a video mixer that runs in software, and that can take sources from devices that you have in the studio, but it can also take feeds from other websites and other web sources, and then it feeds out into some sort of device that will actually do the streaming. So you take the output of OBS and you can feed that into Skype, or you could feed it into Twitch, or you could feed it into something else that is then streaming the output.
Okay.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Bukola.
Thank you.
That's all right. We have one more comment, which is from Peter Gill. Yes, Jason at the CMTO has Peter writing up a webinar for trainers to help them overcome the fear. So to help volunteers overcome the fear of technical stuff, which is great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Peter. You're the best. All right. I'm thinking if there aren't any more questions, shall we wrap up for this evening?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So thank you so much to all our presenters, and thank you so much to everyone for coming. It's really nice and heartwarming to see so many people attending this kind of webinar. And please, if you could, after you finish the webinar, fill out the feedback form that pops up, because it's really important for us to curate the content that you want to see and that's important to you. So yeah, it just takes 5 minutes, just fill out the survey. I go through the answers, so say nice things, please. And yes, we also have some things about our virtual conference, which I think John would like to talk about.
I was just going to say, don't forget, you go to the website, here it is, and there is the form that you can fill in, and there were lots of questions that came up tonight. If that is a topic that you would like discussed at Technorama, tell us now so we can think about whether or not that's a good idea for a session, put it into the mix, and maybe organize it as a breakout session for TR20V. There you go.
Cool. Yes, please do put the 4th of July in the diary for the virtual conference. It's going to be really fun. It's going to be great. We're going to be talking about so many different things. So, and hearing all your feedback would be awesome. It really helps us to curate, like I said, the content you want to see. So in saying all that, thank you so much everyone for coming, and we'll let you go into the night. And thank you so much to Stephen Wilkinson, Chris Deacon, Josh Pearson, Trent Geddes, and John Maizels, of course. And we'll see you all later. Bye.
Bye.